This isn't a side idea. This is a dominant storytelling system that comes with all sorts of archetypal designs. Just the fact that these characteristics exist automatically create character motivations.
They do.
Unlike the hero's journey, Labyrinth story models have an inward focus, inward within the native culture, inward psychologically. When she descends into Buffalo Bill's basement, it's not like any basement you or I have ever seen.
Yeah.
It's a maze. There are numerous types of secret doors, and they have different meanings. The phrase rabbit hole has an entire definition because of this story. As a writer, especially if you've been brought up and raised on the hero's journey, it may be hard to decouple from it a little bit, but it is absolutely worth your while to understand the labyrinth as a storytelling model. Hi, everybody. I'm Douglas A. Burton, and today we're going to be discussing labyrinths in film, and by extension, labyrinths in story and what it could do for you as a writer. Because as a writer, a lot of times story structure can feel elusive, and planning scenes and everything can get a little tricky. So we turn to story structure, and a lot of us have turned to the hero's journey. And I am going to make the case that a labyrinth structure for your story may not only be the right fit, but could really solve a lot of your problems as a writer. It's unbelievable what a labyrinth narrative model can do in terms of driving conflict, characterization, and story progression as well. So joining me this evening is Retro Nerd Girl.
Hello.
How you doing, Retro?
Really good. How are you today?
Awesome. Now, you are also a writer, is that correct?
Trying to be.
Yeah, that's fine. But you're an aspiring writer. You have a creative drive. Do you want to tell everyone, in a nutshell, kind of where you are as a writer and what you're hoping to learn?
Well, I have written a lot of ideas, and I've written a lot of material, but I have struggled with putting it all together. I think I know my story up here, but I've written all the things, but I don't know how to actually put it all together and feel confident about it. I think it's confidence.
Well, you're not alone, and it's a normal part of the writing journey. So a lot of people, and there's going to be a lot of people listening in that are right where you are and feel the same way. Even if you're an established writer, you could fall into a rut or get out of habit. But one of the things we're going to help work through, me and Retro, we're going to talk about it, discuss it, and try to work through it and give writers and creatives, even a memoirist, real concrete things that you can use immediately to improve your writing. While you're writing the video, you could jot down a note, and hopefully there'll be a light bulb. You'd be like, I could use that right now. Or I could start organizing my story right now using this stuff. So these are meant to be immediately useful. And Retro and I talked about it, and we thought one of the great starting points was the labyrinth itself, because it provides a narrative, cohesive structure that is easily recognizable, and it is everywhere in film. We've all heard of the hero's journey, and we love to talk about it. I love to talk about it. I love the hero's journey. I'm a proponent and an advocate for it, but the hero's journey may not always fit for your particular story or project. So if not, then listen up, because the labyrinth offers a legitimate alternative. And Retro and I are hoping to convince you how pervasive it is once you see the number of movies in which a literal or metaphoric labyrinth is just sitting there. It's all over the place. And we're not talking obscure films. We're talking major films that a lot of you have seen.
Listening to you talking on a couple other channels that I watch you on, I was just like, putting together the pieces and seeing like, oh yeah, remember this movie, remember that movie. And plus you're like excellent at describing a lot of them that are already in your kind of collection of movies that you talk about. But I started to notice how they just sort of pop up, and I'm like, there's the land. It's great. It's great.
Well, so it's not just a thing. I believe that there are very powerful reasons why labyrinth imagery occurs in stories. And film is such a great medium because you could see it. I mean, it's right there.
Yes.
And we'll discuss specifics. We won't just be perfectly abstract. We'll discuss the abstractions, but we'll give you concrete examples that you can use and see, so you can make the connection and say, I can do this today in my, I could start building this out in my story right now in a chapter. So, and keep in mind, although it's visual, these are visual cues, also speak secretly to a narrative structure that's baked into the imagery and the conflict and the character development all together. So it's not an accident that these labyrinths are appearing. It's like a psychological extension. So, Retro, I'll hand it over to you. Let's go over some of these movies.
Okay, the first one up is the actual movie that's called Labyrinth, 1986. Does it say six? I'm sorry, your logo is right in front of
Yeah,
it.
1986, I believe, is correct.
1986, and of course has a huge labyrinth on display, as you could see in the top picture in the corner there. And you can even say that, this might all be happening in the character's head, but it is definitely a place in this movie that you can definitely see that labyrinth. And pretty much like everything that you've described about the labyrinth is featured in this.
Well, why
About
don't
the
I,
story.
real quick, I'll leave the visual up there, but just so as you're going through these, people can make a mental note that this matches. But the characteristics of a labyrinth, I've got 6 basic characteristics, and this is a great one to start with, Retro, because it really has all of them. Mobility, that's a characteristic. You are free to move. The design of a labyrinth is freedom of movement while keeping you contained inside. So mobility is a feature. There's a game-like scenario attached to labyrinths, clearly here. Misdirection. So there's a lot of cases where, as the story develops, the lead character, in this case, the heroine Sarah, it was misdirected in multiple ways. Illusions are a big one, where things are not what they seem. That's a strong characteristic of a labyrinth. Captivity. The threat of captivity is part of a labyrinth story model. And also that there is danger, proximate dangers inside the labyrinth. So those are 6 basic characteristics of a labyrinth, and you'll see them as we go, but it's good to mention them up front so you have some criteria on how to judge these films as we go through.
Pan's Labyrinth. Now, I haven't seen this one, but I do know story. There is a labyrinth in there, and there is a secret door in there too.
Oh, big time.
And Ophelia is in a labyrinth throughout the entire most of the film. So yeah, that is pretty obvious, but
Well,
it's
and in both films, there's so like in the hero's journey, the hero leaves and goes far away from the native culture. In both of the first 2 films, you pointed out, the special world is right beside the ordinary world for each heroine.
yes.
There's their real life, and then just a nudge to the left or to the right, there's the special world. So that's another facet of these stories, is that the so-called special world or the unusual world is right beside the ordinary in a lot of these stories.
It's The Shining, which I think is so fascinating. And I would hear you talk about The Shining, and I was like, wait a minute, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
But then it's like it has the classic labyrinth within. We have the
Big time.
model of the labyrinth, and then we actually have the garden labyrinth outside,
The hedge
which
maze.
plays the hedge maze. It actually plays a big part in the story
Right.
at the end to save these characters. But then you also have the hotel itself, which of what you've described of the labyrinth has like long hallways and many rooms where mysterious rooms and
Yep.
strange places. And so I was like, when I saw The Shining the last time, I couldn't help but notice how at the beginning of the film, they were going through the entire Overlook Hotel to show you all of the many places, and it looked just like a labyrinth.
Well,
And
do you know that there's a couple lines of dialogue dedicated to it. She's being given a tour
mm,
of the Overlook Hotel by Dick Halloran. He's walking her around,
yes,
and she goes, "I feel like I need to leave a trail of breadcrumbs." And
yes,
I thought that was a huge line because that is a reference to Hansel and Gretel.
yes,
And
yes.
she leaves little breadcrumbs. And by the way, the breadcrumb motif will appear in a lot of these films, by the way, as a method by which
Mhm.
actual characters in these actual settings leave a little trail behind to help. Like Ripley does it when she goes to sublevel 3 to rescue Newt. She
Yeah, yeah,
pulls these flares out and drops them down.
yes.
Moana has these little seashells like breadcrumbs leading her out into the ocean. So the breadcrumb mention was a dead giveaway that she's in a labyrinth right now. And then just to
Danny.
add power to it, you've got the overt, you have the symbolic labyrinth of the
Mm.
Overlook Hotel, but right outside, again, the ordinary world and the special, it's right next door. It's right
It's
beside
right
her.
next door, yeah, and
Yeah.
also Danny kinda uses a breadcrumb to find his way out of the hedge maze at the end with the footprints, so
The
just
footprints, that's exactly
yeah,
right.
yeah, so good. I mean, this movie really surprised me how much they did use, the labyrinth, and in such a clever way, and the multiple, the idea of multiple labyrinths being in one story, which I love that idea as
And it
well.
means something. This isn't just
Mm,
a setting. That's what I
yeah.
can't wait to discuss at the end of all of this is the fact that the labyrinth is showing up is actually the byproduct of the structure of the story itself.
Harry Potter. This is the Tri-Wizard Maze that's in Goblet of Fire, and that is definitely another hedge maze
Yep.
as well. I would even say Harry Potter just being in the wizard world itself is sort of like, especially finding all of the different rooms and all of the different it's all very symbolic of a labyrinth, right?
Hogwarts. You are so correct. One of the other characteristics, and we can get into it later, but the layers of history usually hidden inside these labyrinths or settings. That's part of where the secrecy and the hidden agendas and artifacts and the secret doors, all of it speaks to the fact that there's an architect. You're inside something that was designed. So you are at a loss to whoever knows the labyrinth better than you. So
Mhm.
when you find a secret door, well, someone's been there before, and you just discovered it, buddy. So
Yeah.
that's tension.
Yeah, it's so incredible, especially a place as old as Hogwarts. This is an old story. The Maze Runner, which is they're in this maze and it's huge and scary.
Yeah. So I mean, it started as a book and it was adapted into a film. I think they were trying to capitalize on some level on the Hunger Games scenario, the
Yes.
deadly game genre. Which,
Mhm.
by the way, Hunger Games is also a Heroine's Labyrinth as well. This is much more of the obstacle course. I'll get
Yes.
into some of these others like racetracks, obstacle courses. These are all symbolic mazes as well. So, like
Mhm.
Silence of the Lambs opens with her on an obstacle course. So it's an immediate hearkening to this idea
Hmm.
of a labyrinth, a maze.
Okay. And on that note, heist movies also kind of have that, like, okay, you've got to get through this, and you have the passcode, and then you've got to, climb down the wall. Would you consider that sort of as a labyrinth kind of setup?
100%. So one of the great symbols of the labyrinth is the spiral. Basically, it's an inward journey, and the spiral I use is like a galaxy symbol where there's an inward and then an outward, which
Hmm.
is a heist. You get in and then you get out. Um,
Oh.
Also, crime genres is an inward journey as well. The hero's journey
Mhm.
famously does not work for crime genres, but the labyrinth model absolutely does.
Mm.
And then also, horror films are
Yeah.
famously poor fits for the hero's journey, but perfect fits for the labyrinth model as well.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking about that as I was researching this, and also the number of horror movies that does have like puzzle boxes and like Hellraiser and
Oh,
like
all of them.
little
Saw.
yeah, there's just so many of those type of movies that have that same characteristic. Barbarella, Queen of the Galaxy, 1968. It's so kitschy and fun, and they have a literal labyrinth in it. It is a prominent feature in the film. There's I believe that there are some features of the heroine's labyrinth in this movie in particular. There's an unmasking, there's a fragile power,
Mm.
and lots of secret doors. She's going into a secret door right there. The city of Gogo has a lot of different passages and stuff where you can fall into different rooms and things. So that's very labyrinthy.
Well, trap
As
doors are another. There's the secret door, but there's also the trap door is
the
another
trap
version.
door, and she encounters both. Bram Stoker's Dracula, I was watching it on a watch party I had a few weeks back, and I was like, "Oh my god, there's a hedge maze in this movie." As
And Jonathan Harker also gets trapped in a labyrinth of his own in the castle.
in the castle, yes.
Because he's
Uh,
captive
yeah,
in that setting. So you really have, again, like in The Shining, you have two different mazes
mm,
where both you have two characters trapped in them as well. And then you have the disorientation. In this scene here, I think Lucy is under a spell and kind of
yes.
walking around. And then later, Mina Harker with the absinthe. So there's this confusion, this distortion, these illusions.
Illusions, yeah,
Yeah,
because at one point he says, "You don't see me," and she forgets everything that she just witnessed.
love this
Inception,
one.
and she actually draws the labyrinth.
And her name is Ariadne.
Yes,
In classical mythology, the origin of the labyrinth, the most famous labyrinth, is from the king of Minos. He hires Daedalus to design the labyrinth. And in the center of the labyrinth, hidden inside, is a Minotaur. And Theseus and Ariadne go into the labyrinth. And although Theseus slays the Minotaur, it is Ariadne who solves the labyrinth.
yeah.
So the character's name, her name is Ariadne, and she designs mazes in Inception.
Dark City is another movie that is there's a physical maze that's on a table, and there's also the city itself, which is
Right.
this circular item right down the bottom. It's a spaceship actually, but it's a huge maze to try to find Shell Beach. Nobody can find it. Everybody knows of Shell Beach, but they can't find it. But yeah, the labyrinth theme is in there to the point where they actually have a little mini labyrinth.
I love it. That's great.
The man with the golden gun. The labyrinth really plays a small part in this movie, but it's the big climax at the end where
Mm.
the bad guy, and he's a nasty piece of work, uh, is trying to get Bond, and he what he does is he invites people to his exclusive island, uh, and the best gunsman in the world, and he defeats them and uses the illusions of the labyrinth that he's built to defeat them with it, to confuse them and get them all out of sorts. And he puts Bond at the end of the movie in this labyrinth. It's really
Ooh.
great. The next one is Zardoz. It's a weird movie, but I love it so much. This is Sean Connery. At the last portion of the movie kind of like reconstructs the world. It's a pretty weird world, but he is the one to reconstruct it. And there's a scene where he's going through a whole bunch of illusionary mirrors that he is trying to destroy and like reconstruct the entire society. And
Oh,
so
wow.
it's a heroine's labyrinth, and it's a really weird world. I really hope you get to see it. It's really great.
Enter the dragon.
And it's a dragon, and you can say that the island itself as a fortress is a labyrinth in a way. There are many places you can't go. You can go, and then at the end, there's of course this mirror battle, and it's probably one of the most famous scenes from this movie.
Yep.
Bruce Lee is gotten a few times by the bad guy because he's sort of out of sorts and he doesn't, he's at a disadvantage. Into the Woods is actually a musical, but the woods itself, it is very labyrinthy, I would
Well, and
say.
that looks like a Little Red Riding Hood type of
That is.
motif.
There's a quite a few fairy tales mixed into the storyline, and of course the main one is Little Red Riding Hood, and that's the wolf in the back being played by Johnny Depp. Wrath of the Titans, which I actually liked this movie much better than Clash of the Titans remake, but there is a definite like labyrinth and puzzles to solve. The Grand Budapest Hotel, and it is obviously the hotel itself with the many rooms and every that's its own culture inside that would
Yes.
could stand for a labyrinth. And then to get to the to get to the hotel, look at this labyrinth here. It's really, like, impressive.
Wow.
You got a lot of work to do to get to the hotel, I'll tell you that. And then we were talking about Ex Machina weeks back, and we said the complex itself, that's the labyrinth, where we have all these robots and all these long halls and, strange rooms, some you can get into, some you can't get into, and
He actually
it's
says at one point, Ava was a rat in a maze.
yes, yeah, and, it's very interesting because a lot of these walls too are you don't know if you're in front of you don't know where you are. They all look identical, all the halls,
Yeah.
except for this one where you could see masks on the wall, but most of them don't look like anything identifiable. Like you wouldn't know what part of the complex you were in. Ready Player One was a movie I did not see, but I know that it does follow the game motifs of like going through different obstacle courses to get to one place to another,
Yeah, the
and
game-like scenario is pretty big. Racetracks, obstacle courses, both of those are secondary metaphors for a labyrinth as well. So, yeah, and this one has the illusionary world again right next door. It's right there. It's
yes, yeah.
just,
And the Wizard of Oz, obviously, another world within a world or beside the real world. The Yellow Brick Road, this road goes through forests, it goes to poppies, it goes through,
yeah, there's
everything.
intersections.
Yeah, it just goes everywhere, and so it is sort of the roadmap within a labyrinth, if you will. So
Well,
yeah.
labyrinths are multi-linear. That's
Mm.
another thing that kind of distinguishes it from conceptually from the hero's journey, which is more linear, there and
Oh.
back again, so the multi-linear, multi-directional journey is different. And the Yellow Brick Road, although there are aspects of Wizard of Oz that feel like a hero's journey, it still has these other elements in it where it's basically a two-dimensional labyrinth on the ground. Yeah, when she encounters the scarecrow for the first time, it
Yes.
actually splits off into multiple things. And what does he do? Misdirects her. He's
Yeah.
pointing, this way and then that way and then both ways. So immediate misdirection when she encounters the first creature on this path.
Now, Alice in Wonderland is, again, another fantasy world, or the world beside another world.
Yeah,
Um,
it's in a rabbit hole in her backyard, a rabbit hole. In fact, the phrase rabbit hole has an entire definition because of this story. Rabbit hole to means get lost in complexity.
mm,
And so Alice has given us this idea that hope I don't go down a rabbit hole.
yeah.
Because it means it's going to be confusing and deep
Yeah.
and time consuming. And like you said, it's right out in her backyard.
Yeah. Another thing too, if you're gonna look for Alice in Wonderland, or you type that in to Google and look at images, many times you will see a spiral image attached to the character. It's very interesting, but that's sort of, to kind of describe her falling into the hole, I suppose. But it's
Right, right.
really interesting. And there she is, like, finding her way through a secret door. Coraline, which you've talked to me a lot about, you've gotten me to watch it and
Yeah.
absolutely loved it. All my fears about it went out the window, the
Oh,
button
it's so
eyes and
good. Yeah.
everything. But it's so interesting how everything you described about the labyrinth is in this, the secret door, the tunnel, the spiraling, and then at the end
Spider web.
there's another spiraling when she's on the web, and it's really incredible, especially that house.
Yeah. So again, the special world is right beside the ordinary world, parallel worlds again. And two, just like Wizard of Oz, although it feels like this fantastical journey, the people in the special world are doppelgangers of her ordinary world. Her
Yeah.
mother, the other mother, the father, Dorothy, it's her uncles and the salesman and the mean old lady who's trying to get Toto. So you get these doppelgangers of her ordinary world in the special world.
Yeah, and also there's so many illusions
Oh, big time.
being woven to confuse the protagonist.
And the game-like
Love that.
scenario at the end.
Yes, it was so much like a game. And Star Wars, like you could tell, like as soon as I was thinking about a fortress or a place where you have all these different tunnels, they're long, they the different levels that they needed to go to. She opened up a secret door for them. Just so great to see those attributes in a movie I've seen over hundreds and hundreds of times and to see it for the first time with the labyrinth in mind.
100%. And I just want to point out that I have this book called The Magic of Myth, Star
Mm.
Wars, The Magic of Myth. And it actually refers to the Death Star, the labyrinth, and the rescue of the princess. And it has imagery in here. If you can
What?
see it, where it shows motifs of labyrinths. And it says, in classical mythology, the labyrinth has always represented a difficult journey into the unknown. It is really a metaphor for our experience of life, which often seems, while we're in the midst of it, to be twisting, winding road with no sense as to its digressions. And she even references TH 1138, which has maze-like imagery in it
Yes.
as well. So the Death Star is a maze. It's a labyrinth. And inside this labyrinth is a masked Minotaur and also a princess, a heroine. A heroinism.
This is a movie about the Minotaur or the fable or we would call the classic mythology, and it is not a great reproduction of the story, but it definitely describes the entire set of events. With a little Hollywood magic, and then there is a huge labyrinth in which the Minotaur is hanging out and just devouring people. The Matrix. Now, what do you call the Matrix itself, right? You're in the real world, and then you have to get into the Matrix.
That's right. Yeah. So there's multiple interpretations of this. You can do a hero's journey interpretation of the Matrix, and it does work.
Yes.
However, you can also do a labyrinth interpretation of it, and it also works. It has all the archetypes in there as well. So the Matrix is uniquely suited to kind of have a little bit of both. And actually, the scene you put on there is a great example.
Yes.
The story opens with a heroine, and right away she's running through hallways and rooftops and intersections. She has to escape the labyrinth. And then when Neo is recruited here, he has to follow very specific instructions on how to navigate the labyrinth, by taking dictation over the phone in order to escape.
Well, they use the same exact scene in Barbie when she has to go through all those cubicles.
That was actually an homage to another film called Playtime, which used that cubicle symbolism, but it too is very labyrinthine. So it was borrowing a labyrinth image from a different film. But like Barbie, he's in a corporate high-rise, which becomes the labyrinth in that case.
This scene where he's crouched low, like trying to figure out, like, where do I go? Do I go turn left, turn right? There's also a scene at the end of the movie when Neo is looking for the next phone line he can get to, and that's also following that same, like, okay, where do I, he's on the phone and he's like, where do I go now? And I think that's the last one from me.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a couple other ones here that I can go through. I don't have as many, but I do have a couple. I'll just go through them in alphabetical order, since that's what I've got. But A Quiet Place actually has, like the Yellow Brick Road, it's got that multilinear sand path that goes through the city, and its purpose is to keep your feet quiet as you walk. So the game scenario in A Quiet Place is you can't make a noise. it's a bizarre rule, and it
Yes.
has severe consequences if you break this rule. And there's also a hedge maze made of corn, which is a very common one. And up top, you can see the kids trying to escape through that as well. Also, there's imagery where as you get closer to home, they put the red lights on if there's an alien nearby and all this. So very strong labyrinthine imagery in A Quiet Place. Okay, so Alien. Alien has some aspects of the hero's journey. She leaves her regular home. She goes far away. She has to fight an evil, foreign, distant dragon type. But there are also very powerful labyrinthine model aspects here. And the entire ship is a labyrinth, and
Yes.
it even has
The
those.
Nostromo, right?
The Nostromo is a labyrinth, and you see the long passageways, the claustrophobic narrow hallways. You have when they go into the air ducts, they form spirals, but they open and close to restrict movement.
Well, I also wanted to mention that the jockey's ship, the
Oh
alien.
yeah, from Alien.
Yeah, that's a labyrinth too, because of course it's disorienting where they are, and then there's like a sub level where they have to. That's where the eggs are.
100%.
A nice little trap for you.
Right, and that's where you get the layers of history. There's this, something happened here. We don't know what it is, and that is also in Aliens. Whatever happened here, sir. I think we missed it. There's and you have the barricades and the walls and the secret doors all through this, and locked doors. So also the sequel Aliens has some very powerful labyrinth motifs and imagery as well. Ripley, the Marines go into a labyrinth. There's a scene where there's a secret door. Newt, like Leia, Newt finds a secret door and they enter this labyrinth, and that's where they make their escape. And it's very intense stuff. And Ripley must actually go back into sub-level 3 to rescue Newt later. And that's where she brings the flares like breadcrumbs to help her mark her way in and out of that labyrinth. So real strong stuff there in Aliens. Very strong stuff in Aliens for the labyrinth imagery and symbolism.
Yeah.
Okay, Barbie, you were just talking about it.
Yes.
There's some of the cubicles right there. Barbie starts as a hero's journey, like unmistakably so. She's afraid of death. She leaves her native culture and she goes into the special world by, kind of an unusual methodology.
Yes.
But once she gets to the Mattel world, it's very much a labyrinth, and she's chased, which is typical. So the idea of captivity. At one point, they're trying to get her into the box to reset the world, and she refuses to do that. And then there's this chase scene, and she runs into all these long endless hallways, and there's another secret door there, and hidden chambers and chamber guardians inside. So even Barbie, which is considered a pretty modern film, has the labyrinth imagery.
That's so wild. I was thinking of it, and there it is. I didn't see that.
Yeah, and those, like I said, Playtime. But I think it's Jacques Tati, a French director who made a movie, and they used those kind of cubicles. So Greta Gerwig was actually doing an homage by creating a similar pattern in the Mattel corporate office.
Yeah, interesting.
Another modern film. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, where the heroine, Evelyn Wang, you see she has this handheld device. If you look up top, you'll see it literally shows this labyrinth where there's all these multiverses and all these other realities she can go to. And it'll choose her route and it'll send her there. Secondly, like Wizard of Oz, like Coraline, her special world is right next to her ordinary world. And like Coraline and Wizard of Oz, the people in the special world are doppelgangers of the people in her ordinary world.
Yes. Yeah.
So all the imagery is there. This is actually a fantastic film for a labyrinth narrative model. In fact, that's her daughter. Her daughter's the masked Minotaur of that story, by the way. Hunger Games. The Hunger Games is it's a hero-centric story, and it follows the game-like scenario, again, like Maze Runner, where it's a deadly game. And it's a survival system, and they're trying to escape this labyrinth, repeatedly. And again, it's on her home turf. This comes from her culture.
Yeah. And this fulfills like that genre of film where like The Running Man.
Oh, a perfect one. Yep.
Yeah, it sort of fulfills that whole like, oh, within the society is the labyrinth where she's like, trying to change something to make it better, right?
Yeah. And again, remember mobility, right? She can go anywhere she wants, but she's still captive. That
Yeah.
is a telltale sign of the labyrinth, that you have freedom of movement, but you're actually in some ways imprisoned or held captive in some way.
Mm. Mm.
And then you mentioned earlier that the labyrinthine imagery or system or narrative model has psychological overtones. And one great movie that I'm sure we've all seen,
Yes.
yes, that drives this home, another
Sorry.
hero-centric story, where the labyrinth itself is inside the mind of
Yes.
Riley, the lead character, or the girl there. So the ordinary world is Riley's world.
Mm.
But the special world is right inside her mind, where these characters operate. And you see, they literally have several shots where they're walking through her mind like it's a maze.
Yeah.
And I've had discussions with Cameron Pasha. He's a Hollywood screenwriter, and he has a strong sense that the labyrinth model is a physical manifestation of psychological forces. So, and I agree with him. I think he is onto something there. And I think Inside Out is a perfect metaphor for that duality of the physical manifestation. I like to refer to the socio-cultural manifestation, but there's definitely a psychological manifestation to it as well.
Yes. And
Inward.
it's characters will go into these worlds or these labyrinths in order to deal with real world issues that they're facing. Not that their world is wrong or there's a problem, but there's something that they need to deal with, and they can deal with it in this labyrinth.
Right. Unlike the hero's journey, labyrinth story models have an inward focus, even inward within the native culture, inward psychologically. It is an inward journey, and that's fundamental to understand. Even movies like Barbie that try to be a hero's journey, the heroine comes flying back into her home world halfway through the story, and then the story resettles in her native culture.
And notice it happens when she's in the real world. Just saying.
Yeah, there's a relationship there between the special world and the real world, or I should say the special world and the ordinary world. As Christopher Vogler puts it, there's a relationship in the labyrinth model that is paralleled. And that's not typical of hero's journey stories. They are two distinctly separate worlds, separated by a clear demarcation line known as a threshold, which usually has a threshold guardian that must be passed. So the relationship between the special world and the ordinary world in labyrinthine stories is remarkable.
Yes.
And you had a what was it called? Zardoz with Sean Connery.
Yes.
There's another one. The Name of the Rose.
I love this movie.
Yes. And this is actually we talked about how the labyrinth model works very, very well, if not perfectly, for crime dramas.
Yes.
And this, in essence, is a medieval crime story, right?
Yes.
And inside this monastery is this beautiful labyrinth imagery. There's hidden doors, there's secret knowledge and inner chambers everywhere.
Yes.
It is beautiful. And the imagery in the film for the labyrinth, it's got the confusing stairwells everywhere. It's just wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, what a movie. What a movie.
Yeah. So we had Roger Moore. We're getting a lot of Bonds involved in this. Another one here. This is a classic, by the way, started as a play. The Phantom of the Opera.
Yes.
Right below the opera house in Paris. Again, right there. It's right there.
Yeah.
Right below the opera house is this incredible world. It's a labyrinth. If you watch the film or the play, you'll see strong labyrinthine images as the masked individual, the Phantom, guides her through this place. And it's very surreal and dreamlike in a lot of them, which is another characteristic of labyrinths. The system of illusions that you'll see is very strong in Phantom of the Opera, and another heroine-centric story. Silence of the Lambs has incredible labyrinth. Everywhere you go are long hallways. If you look above, the image above, you know what that is? That is the set design for Buffalo Bill's basement, the Hollywood set. So they had to build Buffalo Bill's basement. And when I found, I was like,
This is one like at the end scene we get a chance to experience his I guess you could call it bunker.
so there's labyrinth imagery all through the film. The Baltimore Asylum is
Yeah.
very dungeon-like and labyrinth-like, but unmistakably, when she descends into Buffalo Bill's basement, it's not like any basement you or I have ever seen.
Yeah.
It's a maze. It's a
Yeah,
maze.
it is a maze.
And what's beautiful is when I saw how they built the set, now there's no question. I mean,
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
basement is designed to look like that.
Wow. Wow. It's so interesting because that last scene is so disoriented. It's dark, but it's also you have no clue where you are. There's so many turns. Like surely you must. It's just the basement, right? No, it was this basement.
Right. So there's a lot of misdirection and captivity. The captivity theme is there as well. Catherine Martin is inside of a well. Terminator 2. There's this entire segment early on in the early middle part of the film where Sarah Connor has to escape a mental asylum. And what's interesting is the Terminator and John Connor are coming there to rescue her, like Princess Leia in the labyrinth of the Death Star. However, she's in the midst of her own breakout.
Yeah.
So I had one person, you know him, James Bacon. He says that the labyrinth model, one version of it is like a jailbreak because you're trying to escape. That is one of the things. So here, yes, you're trying to escape this restrictive system. And here you have Sarah Connor breaking out, and she's going through all these hallways. There's locked doors everywhere. Also later, although it's not in the asylum, there is a secret door where there's an entire like arsenal of weapons below the ground.
Yeah.
In Terminator 2.
Oh, yes.
Time Bandits. It's so weird and quirky and strange and fantastical. Anyway, there's this huge labyrinth, and they actually have to run along the top of the labyrinth instead of in the corridors. And if you fall, that's the danger. So you don't want to fall into the abyss below. WandaVision. It's a hero-centric story. She is trapped in a very specific location. There's an entire system of illusion in this. Captivity and danger are also big motifs as well. And although it's not direct game scenario, it still feels like it's game-like in that they try to spoof the different eras of sitcoms.
Yes. So there are like new rules every week. Societal rules, because you have to be within the scope of whatever era it is. Like 90s, everybody's looking 90s. If you're in the 50s, you got to look like your 50s and act like it too.
Right, exactly. So anyway, you see how pervasive labyrinths are in turning up in stories. So as a writer, you know, especially if you've been brought up and raised on the hero's journey, it may be hard to decouple from it a little bit, but it is absolutely worth your while to understand the labyrinth as a storytelling model. And you can use it as a setting, but you can, the entire story can follow a labyrinth model.
Well, I was thinking too, for WandaVision, something that was interesting, it was held within a dome.
Right.
Which is, it's closed off. It's closed off to the rest of the world, but it's contained within the dome. Or something. Yeah. It's and that, while we were talking just now, it just opened up, like you talked about, like the different types, like jailbreak movies. That would be like an interesting study to see how it's applied there, and like any like movies with the dome. I remember there's a couple of movies.
The Truman Show.
The Truman Show, Biodome. There is also another low budget movie that had like a dome on it. Escape from New York.
Yes, Escape from New York is perfect.
It's right there. And so like even more and more as you're describing it, I'm getting more and more ideas of movies that fit in this particular like labyrinth theme. It's not just the physical labyrinth that you're used to seeing. It's also all of these other things too. So it's like, it's great.
Yeah. Well, so as a storyteller, if you're a writer, it's everywhere. The labyrinth model is all over the place in stories. Now, a lot of these writers were obviously doing this intuitively. And my belief is, although they were doing it intuitively, these stories went to the finish line. They made it into the movies. They're
Yeah.
remembered. We just went through several of them as examples. So, these are the ones that worked. These are stories that worked to greater or lesser degrees. But I would say most of these stories are very recognizable and very well received and well known. So, what's going on? Why? Why is the labyrinth such a pervasive element in storytelling? Why does it show up all the time? And what can we as writers do in order to tap into some of this?
Yes.
So, real quick, labyrinths symbolize psychological, moral, and social estrangement. That is a general definition that is used as in terms of the symbolism, the general symbolism of a labyrinth. Well, if you are writing a story where the character doesn't go on a hero's journey, the color purple, she's going to stay in her culture where she was born. She's going to stay in that area. Well, social estrangement, social conflicts, and social dangers are proximate. They are close by, and there is a relationship between the social stresses and the psychological stresses there. So these are vital. This isn't a side idea. This is a dominant storytelling system and motif that comes with all sorts of archetypal designs. But we're going to stay focused on the labyrinth itself. So let's dive into why the labyrinth emerges and has been so persistent and so pervasive. And yet, like you just pointed out, it's expressed in so many different ways. It doesn't feel repetitive. I haven't ever heard someone point to all these mazes in films like this because it didn't feel pervasive. It felt like each film was unique in its own way. And only now are we looking at it and saying, there's a labyrinth, there's a labyrinth, there's a labyrinth. So why? That's one of the questions we want to tackle right now. So what are the characteristics of a labyrinth? We addressed it early on when we first started the video, and I came up with 6 basic characteristics of a labyrinth that help you identify it. And all the films we just covered have one, but probably multiple, if not all of these elements attached. The idea of mobility. This isn't the hero's journey where you can go anywhere you want. The whole point of the hero's journey is you are traveling out. You are going to be bushwhacking it over that hill. You could turn left. You could turn right. You can go wherever. You're going to cross the ocean. There is literally nothing stopping you until you reach your destination. That's part of the allure and power of the hero's journey, is that it's pure freedom of movement with pure existential danger in unknown territories, in liminal spaces, vast oceans and deserts and forests. Labyrinths are different. You have this freedom of movement, but you are contained. So that is a characteristic. So a spaceship is a great place to have like an aliens or alien. You have freedom of movement, but you are still trapped. The game-like scenarios in which there are rules in which you can win or lose to varying degrees. I even think of in the movie Alien, where she starts the timer. Both films have this countdown. That's a game. You now have 2 minutes to reach minimum safe distance. That's like a game scenario. The clock's running. You're on the clock. And think about it. She even has to set this thing up. It's like a puzzle. She has to pull these things out. She has to unscrew them. And so it's like a puzzle she has to solve right there in the ship. So you get these strange expressions of game-like scenarios that are different in all of these stories. Misdirection, and we'll get into the various levels of this, but there's some element of confusion there that is leading you into different directions, deliberately getting you to go one way or the other. Illusions, a big one. Things are not what they seem inside the labyrinth. That is a massive feature of these stories. And as a storyteller, it's fun because now you're going to be misdirecting your audiences and your readers as well. So understanding the system of illusions is something you could tap into immediately and start to apply. Captivity. We already mentioned that although you are free to move, you are held captive in some way. The Running Man is another great example, like you said. Hunger Games, where the game-like scenario is the premise of the story.
Yes.
But captivity is a large factor in this. And again, captivity is not usually a big factor in the hero's journey. They might get captured briefly, but captivity is a dominant theme in Labyrinth stories.
Yeah.
And then lastly, danger. The dangers here are proximate and threatening. And so there's this strange, fragile truce that seems to be in place a lot where, everyone, where the labyrinth could turn against you at any moment. So you have
Yes.
to play your card right,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
in the film Labyrinth, Sarah's passing through, and then one minute later, the villagers are all chasing her down in every different direction as they try to capture her.
Mhm.
So these are the characteristics of a labyrinth. How can you apply this more directly to your story? So just the fact that these characteristics exist automatically create character motivations.
They do.
This is one of the things I like in understanding this as a narrative model. So if the labyrinth offers these characteristics, your lead character will immediately have goals associated with what the labyrinth offers. So if the labyrinth offers free mobility within a confined setting, well, access to all the areas of the labyrinth is going to be a character goal. She or he is going to want to explore. They're going to want to think of Coraline. She wanted to go up and down the stairs. Beauty and the Beast. She can go anywhere you want, but not that one. That door is locked. In Ex Machina, he says, if the door's locked, then you can't go in there. If it's unlocked, well, that door's for you. So access, prevention of access, blocking the hero or heroine off becomes an immediate form of tension and conflict in your story. Mobility, character wants access. Because the labyrinth is game-like, your character is going to want to win these games. If there is a puzzle, the character is going to want to solve it. If there is a riddle, the character is going to want to solve it. If there is a test, the character is going to want to pass it. So these game-like scenarios become instant motivation for your character. If misdirection, slowing the progress of the lead character down, is a factor in the labyrinth, then your character's motivation, the goal, is to continue making progress. So he or she is going to want to keep advancing in the labyrinth for pure exploration reasons, for uncovering secrets, or for escape. Either way, progressing through, there is a beginning and an end. There's an entrance and an exit. So progress becomes a goal simply because there's people trying to slow your character down. And this is a big one. The labyrinth offers a system of illusions. Nothing is what it seems. So your character is going to have a very powerful relationship with the truth. A lot of the characters in labyrinth stories care a lot about the truth. When I studied heroine-centric stories, I began to realize that so many heroines place such a premium on honesty, authenticity, and truth because it's so elusive to these characters. Think of Wonder Woman. What's her lasso? Lasso of truth. Just give me a straight answer. Someone give me a straight answer, which is very difficult to find inside the labyrinth. So your character will want to pursue truth. That will become a character goal. Because captivity is constantly surrounding your hero in a labyrinth-like setting, your character will automatically associate gaining freedom as one of their goals. Beauty and the Beast, Moana, she wants to go past the breakers. These goals are inherent. How do you escape? How do you get out? So freedom becomes a goal. And this is a big one, freedom. Finally, danger. And you'll see this mostly in the horror versions of labyrinthine stories. Survival is a very simple, very straightforward, very primal goal. So if you're writing a horror story, the labyrinth, the danger in the labyrinth, like think of the films Saw. There's misdirection and illusions and captivity and death. So survival becomes one of the primary goals. It's a primal instinct. We don't need a lot of setup to understand the goals of your character in a survival situation. The movie Halloween with Laurie Strode, right there in the house. It's in a labyrinth, and it's dark. The lights are out, right? So the fact that you could set up a labyrinth provides at least 6 basic goals: access, winning, progress, truth, freedom, and survival. Very simple goals for your lead character in the labyrinth model. And then if you have the labyrinth model set up and the character goals understood, as a writer, you have story actions you could build off immediately in any chapter. This will free you of the burden of, I got to just think of another chapter. God, what's my next chapter? These chapters will start to write themselves because there is an underlying structure to your story. So if mobility is what the labyrinth gives you, and your character desires a goal becomes access, he or she will begin to explore. You can build out chapters of just exploring the labyrinth. I'm writing a book right now where about a historical figure, Byzantine Empress Theodora. She's in a palace. There are scenes where she needs to explore. And there's a sense of getting away with something. You're checking something out that maybe you're not supposed to see. Again, you've gained access somewhere. Immediate tension in your story. If there's a game-like scenario and your character's goal is to win the game, well, what is the story action? To solve the puzzle, to solve the riddle, to pass the test in some way. These are great. Amadeus, which is actually a labyrinth model, they issue him the challenge of playing the music by heart with the chamber guardians. And so Mozart starts playing. He destroys this social test by doing better than the court composer Salieri did in writing the music. He just makes it up on the spot and buries his musician and rival. So passing the test, solving the riddle, big, that's story action. If misdirection and slowing down your character is something the labyrinth offers, and your character seeks to progress and advance through the labyrinth, well, their job is to resist whatever is misdirecting them, whatever is causing them to veer off course. Their job is to resist that. In Pan's Labyrinth, remember, she's not supposed to take anything off the table and eat it, and she's tempted. And in the movie Labyrinth, remember, they're trying to distract her, so she, with nostalgia.
Yes. What a
so
thing.
her job is to resist this. She has to be able to resist these things that are misdirecting her, which prevents her from making progress, and progress is her goal. If illusion is what the labyrinth gives you, and your character seeks the truth, your character will begin to try to sense things. Now, this may not seem like great story action, but I'll tell you as a writer, it's very, very important. In writing groups everywhere, they want to know what your character thinks. They want to know what your character feels. How do they react to this? What do they think? What's their read on this person? So your character's job is to sense this person. When they just meet, what is her? How does she feel about this guy? Does she get a bad vibe from him? Is he giving off some kind of a vibe? Describe it. It's called interiority in writing. How your character reacts, what they think and feel, and what they think they're going to do about it. That's interiority. And that's a form of action, and very well written interiority can drive stories. It's incredible how much power you can get from just trying to have your character figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
If captivity is something the labyrinth is threatening, and your character's goal is freedom, then story action to escape. You can make entire stories, entire films on just the escape, like you said, Escape from New York, Escape from LA, Running Man. In my favorite stuff in the Clone Wars, Ahsoka Tano is framed for a crime she didn't commit. She has to escape, and she goes into a labyrinth to do it. So the escape story, Lilu in The Fifth Element, she's built from that like scanner thing. She comes back to life, and immediately she has to escape. She goes into the ventilation shafts. So escape is big story action, and you'll see it everywhere. Also, danger. If the labyrinth presents mortal danger, then your character's goal is to survive, to confront. Now, this could be evasion, but at some point there will be a confrontation with whatever is trying to kill your hero, or heroine. So the story action to confront this evil. So the goal might begin with escape, but it might end with confrontation. And this, by the way this chart is set up for progression. So the most obvious thing is mobility. And then you run into some more challenges. and then and then with the worst being direct mortal danger. So this is a progressive list of story action. As a writer, you can use this immediately just inside a labyrinth scenario.
That's so good.
So, Retro, what are your thoughts on some of that?
Oh, I'm loving it. They really feel like, especially how you explained it just now, really feel like natural responses to certain, like, if I'm captured, I want to know, okay, how can I get out? It's simple, but also there's a sense of excitement because you can always build tension with, like, making a complicated game, or a puzzle, or you can the access denied, and maybe something happens, maybe there's consequences for getting the wrong, having the wrong answer, or having the wrong, not, doing the correct thing at the right time. You have to turn both keys at the same time. There may be something exciting you can insert in there. But I love the idea that almost like builds up your story right there. You just fill in character and, like, the situation, and it's almost writing the story for you, or you'll just figure out, like, what events do you want to have. Do like, which ones are going to be the most important for your story, or you could have a total hero's journey story, but then this little part that's got that
The
labyrinth in
labyrinth.
there, and, like, Indiana Jones. Pretty much all of them, and all the treasure hunter movies, all the, national treasure movies where you have to find a certain thing to get to another thing. There was also the ones with Tom Hanks where he was doing
The Da
some,
Vinci Code.
the Da Vinci Code. Yes, yes, where you had all these different layers of things you needed, puzzles and pieces, and things you needed to solve
Well,
within a
and keep in mind,
community of something.
well, and if you're writing, you could be writing, let's say your story is an action base. Let's say it's more of a slice of life story or a memoir.
Mm,
Social tests take the place of the puzzle. So like in Amadeus, the first time he enters the emperor's chamber, you have
mm.
all these musicians there, the court composers, the hair director, and all that. And Mozart, they start to test him. They're like, oh, tell us about German theater. I'm a foreigner. I don't know. So Mozart has to pass the social test.
Yeah,
And
you're
he
like,
does. And he succeeds because he insults them right back. He's not
yeah,
taking anything from them. So there's a
yeah,
social test issued. Mozart responds. So
yeah.
what I'm saying is the puzzle or the riddle or the test can be
Hmm,
social. And
yeah.
in Barbie, remember in Barbie when she goes to see Sasha, the younger girl, she's in like a high school cafeteria,
Yes,
and she's
yes.
like, "I'm Barbie." You get the chamber guardian. She's behind a table, and she just starts attacking Barbie with this real harsh, like the worst
Yeah.
possible take on Barbie. And Barbie fails the social test because she is embarrassed
Yeah.
so
That's
Barbie
a
actually
good one.
cries and retreats. She
Yeah,
fails the social test. So,
yeah, yeah.
but that's what I'm trying to say. Even in this, even in that, you have storytelling. There's action there. So there's another chamber.
It could be as simple as going to the library to look something up,
The librarian
Yeah, yeah.
is going to there. You could issue a social test there, or heck, the Dewey Decimal System. Who knows how to do that? That'd be a test, right? That'd be a puzzle to solve. So I'm just saying you can use these scenarios very quickly in almost any type of genre. In the
Mm,
crime genre, getting information
okay.
out of someone you're questioning is that's a test, right? That's a social test. It's a cat and mouse game of intellect and trying to
Mm.
get information out of the person one way or the other. So that's the game-like scenario that you could still add into your stories.
Oh, I love it. And when I think back on, like, one of the stories that I'm working on now, it's like, oh, I see some areas where I could, apply this very easily, and some areas where it's already built in. Like, it was already built in to what I was already doing.
Right.
So I was like, oh wow, that's cool.
So that's the beautiful thing is a lot of this is going to be projected unconsciously into your stories
Mm,
already.
yeah.
Okay. The idea is if you understand it, you can then work with it and build it out really fast. So a labyrinth is a functional world in which there's a structure there, and you as a writer need to understand your structure enough to be able to tell this story. So, and then you have the hidden chambers and the locked doors. So why don't we get into that real quick too, to help show how there are archetypal designs that come with labyrinths, and there's variations, and the variations have very different meanings. So, first and foremost, I love talking about these. Let's take a look at the secret doors that are found in so many stories. There are numerous types of secret doors, and they have different meanings. The four that I'm looking at here are the magical door, the locked door, the hidden door, and the trap door. They each have very different meanings, and they're all present in labyrinth style stories. So the magical door is when the hero or the heroine finds the entrance of some place, usually in their home or outside their home. In Outlander, she finds right outside, she finds a portal to 18th century Scotland. She goes time traveling into this thing. So there's this magical door. The magical door is usually like a portal or an entrance into a magical or special world. And as you and I have discussed in a lot of these stories, the magical world is a parallel or right beside her ordinary world or his ordinary world. So it's a magical door. And it's usually hiding in plain sight in the show Encanto. It's a Disney movie, Encanto. There's a painting on the wall. And if you pull back on the painting, right there's a hidden corridor, and there's someone inside there. I just saw Paddington, and there's a secret door behind a church organ there. So the magical door is usually an entrance to another world. Now, the locked door has a very different meaning. The locked door is much more concerning because it blocks access. Remember, your hero or heroine wants access in a world where you're supposed to have mobility.
Yes.
Locked doors present an immediate challenge to that mobility because somebody doesn't want you in there. It creates immediate tension, and whatever's behind that locked door is what your character is not supposed to know about. So the locked door is indicative of a larger agenda at work that your hero or heroine does not know about. That's what the locked door is. There's usually a secret of some kind behind that locked door, and whatever that secret is usually going to tell you what the larger agenda really is. So that's the locked door inside the labyrinth. One of my favorites is the hidden door, which is a door. It's like the magical door, except that it's like right there. And guess what? It's perfect for escape. You'll see this everywhere. You mentioned Ready Player One. He finally meets her in real life. Artemis. It's Parzival and Artemis, and he finally gets to see her, and they realize they kind of like each other. And then lo and behold, the bad guys come storming in. What does she do? She shows him where there's a little hidden door, and he can escape through this hidden door. Princess Leia in Star Wars, when they're pinned in the hallway, what does she do? It's right there.
The door.
There's a hidden door. We can escape through this. Newt in Aliens, they're pinned up. They're in their, whatever you're going to do it fast. They're going to make their last stand. Oh, right there. There's a way out. The heroine or the hero, they found that there's a hidden door, and it leads to an escape. And you'll see this in a lot of different places, the hidden door. And then finally, the trap door. Usually it's on the ground. You fall in. Tangled has the hidden door as well. They're in the ugly duckling bar, and the horse comes in, and the guard, and they pull the bar thing, and there's a hidden door, and they go underneath the bar into like a cave tunnel. So just a ton of these. And then the trap door, something that you fall into. I was just watching Return of the Jedi, actually, and Luke in Jabba's palace, which is very labyrinthy. There's a trap door there, and that's how they get Luke. Temporarily. But the trap door is really a warning that captivity is part of the game here inside this place. The labyrinth may hold you captive. So the trap door is a very dangerous thing, and it signals something more dangerous in the labyrinth. So anyway, those are the secret doors, the different types of doors and what each one means. So think of your story. Think about whether there's going to be a magical world, a secret agenda, a need for escape, or someone who's trying to capture them. And you'll know which door makes the most sense. And by the way, you can have more than one, obviously. So there, you might have a hidden door and you might have all four.
I love it.
And then, okay, so those are the doors. Walls themselves are a big deal in Labyrinths. So, and each of them can have a slightly different meaning as well. Mazes famously have given us the term dead end.
Yes.
When I was writing about this, that actually could be pretty bad. The word dead is in it. So a dead end could mean there's no passage and whatever's chasing you
could get you.
It's
like Pac-Man. It's like Pac-Man. They corner you in the corner and they
yeah.
they get you.
Pac-Man's a maze, right?
Yeah.
So a dead end could mean a hard stop in your progress. A barricade is a little bit different. That is to prevent passage one way or the other. You could be building the barricade for all we know. In Aliens, they build barricades all the time. They're like, handmade from stuff sitting around. They're trying to keep the aliens from gaining passage. They put steel plates over the doors to block passage. So barricades are important ones. They could be defensive barricades as well. Facades, which are false walls. Something is hidden there. And then finally, isolation. I would say this is more like imprisonment. If there's a four-way wall all around you and you can't get out, then you are trapped. It's not the same as a dead end in which you might be able to turn around and double back. Some walls are prison cells. So you're stuck in there. You're not going anywhere.
Oh boy. Yeah.
And then
I didn't even think about that, but that
what's that?
I didn't think about that, but I'm writing notes. I'm like, I need an isolation chamber. Sorry.
Yeah.
You think you're at a dead end, and then a sheet comes down, and you're in isolation.
Absolutely, you see this. You see people getting trapped all the time.
Yeah.
And then mirrors. You and I have talked about this. There are mirrors show up in Labyrinth stories all the time.
Yes,
it's actually stunning. And I've written down just tons of examples of when mirrors show up. And I've come up with essentially 4 main meanings, and they're all different. They're not the same. They're not all interchangeable. So the most obvious, and you've mentioned them in this stream a couple times, illusions. Mirrors are great symbols for illusions. You can have halls of mirrors. I think you said Zardoz, right? Has like the Hall of Mirrors in it. Or Enter the Dragon has the Hall of Mirrors. What's that other one? Something Wicked This Way Comes. He's trapped in a Hall of Mirrors. You'll see the Hall of Mirrors is everywhere. I just saw it in what's it called? Is it Us? The girl goes in there and there's like a Hall of Mirrors in there as well. And it's a pretty creepy scene actually. But so the mirror can mean illusions, which is meant to distort reality, confuse, and hide the actual directions. You can't tell. I've been in mirror rooms. You really don't know where you're going. You'll run into mirrors.
Yeah, totally disorient you.
It's very disorienting. So one use of the mirror as a symbol is for illusion. And then another one, and this happens a lot in the Labyrinth model, identity, where when you see a character staring into a mirror, and this is kind of obvious, I guess, but
I love this.
Right. But it means something. It's not an illusion. She's looking right at herself, right? She's looking at herself in the mirror, or he's looking at himself in the mirror. He sees him, or she sees herself for what she looks like in that moment. There's purity and honesty in a reflection, right? So the mirror's looking back at you. So it's a moment of self-reflection for the character. And I have this in my story, by the way. It's a very important part because, I won't get into my own story there, but it's a moment of self-reflection for the character because the mirror doesn't lie. It's authentic. So the mirror can also be used to symbolize truth and identity for your character.
Yeah. I mean,
And now
because
the next two are more complex, but they
oh,
are repeating shockingly in stories. Mirrors can mean surveillance.
yes.
Yeah, and a modification of this is like a crystal ball, or they call it the black mirror now, the TV screen, whatever. But
Mhm.
but mainly the mirror is something that is used a lot to keep track of your heroine or your hero as they're moving through the labyrinth. So mirrors, like mirror, mirror on the wall in Snow White. That is the evil queen uses the mirror as a form of
Yes.
surveillance.
I was gonna talk about that. I mean, because she
Oh, go
also
ahead.
uses it for identity too, to the mirror to tell her who she is.
Right, man, great. So that's a dual symbolism. And by the way, dual symbols can be very powerful in your story.
Mm.
So if you can combine meanings or give them
Ah,
double meanings, you're doing something very powerful in your story that readers will pick up on. They will pick up on this. And
mm,
it's not an accident that the story of Snow White, everybody remembers the mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest
yes.
of them all. It's programmed in our head because it's powerful. We understand that the evil queen is using it to surveil Snow White. And like you said, she's looking at it. She wants to be beautiful all the time.
Mhm.
So surveillance is a surprising symbolism for mirrors
Mm.
when it's not illusion or identity. And then lastly, clairvoyance. A surprising number of stories have someone using mirrors, looking down into a mirror to see images of the future for clairvoyance, like fortune telling. The first one that comes to
Oh,
mind is in Lord of the Rings. Galadriel. She's looking into the mirror. She pours water in, but it's essentially a mirror because it's got a reflection. And inside, she could see the future
oh.
events that might come to pass. So
Would you say also this mirror reflection, sometimes people will use water as
yes,
well?
yeah, I think water is a variation. Anything that can give a reflection, I think,
A
is the idea
mirror,
of a
yeah.
mirror. So if water can reflect something back,
Mm,
um, in fact, Lord of the Rings, while we're talking about it, Gollum looks into water, talk about identity.
mhm,
His real identity is clouded. He's half Gollum, half Smeagol. And the reflection in the water is how this
yes.
is reconciled. He gets to talk back and forth between his multiple identities in the reflection.
There's
So,
so many stories with reflections, and they're using, of course, the like lake water or something like that, well water to reflect. Yeah, that definitely is powerful
it is.
imagery and storytelling.
Yeah, and you can use some of these no matter what your story is. I just happen to notice that walls, doors, and mirrors are very pervasive
Mm,
in the labyrinth model stories. So because they're so pervasive, I wanted to understand what they meant. Because if I understand what they mean, um, I can be a better storyteller. I can use them. I can aim them like an arrow and try to hit a bullseye. And when you hit those bullseyes, that's when you're doing something very great to your readers because
yes.
now you're tapping into their archetypal programming. These are
Mm,
pre-coded symbols that by feeding them into your story, they're pre-coded. We'll understand them. We'll grapple
yeah,
with them
yeah,
immediately. So you're giving your readers a chance to immediately connect on a primal level,
yeah,
psychic, on an
yeah.
intuitive level
I love it.
with your storytelling.
Yeah, this is so good. Another movie that comes to mind is A Company of Wolves. Um, I keep mentioning it because
Yes, yes.
there's a part in the movie though, the young girl is looking at herself in the mirror, admiring herself, and it's like a reoccurring event. She is becoming a woman. She's putting on red lipstick,
Oh, yep,
and
yep.
it's just really when you said that, I was just like, oh yeah, there it is in that movie as well. Um, just incredible. And that movie, in case anyone has never seen it, it is basically Little Red Riding Hood kind of stories with to do with werewolves.
Yeah. Well, you see it in like Titanic.
Mm,
She's looking in the mirror
yes.
when Cal's
Yes.
putting on the Hope Diamond, and he's
Mhm.
and he's basically giving her his big sales pitch.
Yeah.
And by the way, and wow, I didn't even think
Oh,
about it. But
good. That's such a good scene too, because she looking at herself in the mirror, that's who she will be if she marries him, as this lady with his brooch on.
right,
Yeah.
and I should have made another panel here called chains, because there are a lot of symbols for shackles. Wrists and neck are the most common, and in that scene, she's literally putting like a chain around her neck, and that
Oh,
is a symbol of captivity
yes.
for Rose. So
The all
it's
ball one
perfect.
chain. Yeah.
Well, and in Barbie, those twisty ties around the wrist, those are symbols of captivity, and it's
Yeah.
beautifully done because they're the twisty ties when you open up a new toy.
Yes.
So, you don't they're there in toys to hold the toy in place
But
in the
it's
box.
also to keep her in her proverbial box, right? To keep her in
Captivity.
her place and where she ought to be.
Right, that's exactly right. So it's a very ingenious way and very easily understandable and
Uh-huh.
easily to resonate with way to show these symbols in ways that the reader understands, and it's different every time. What I love about archetypal designs is that although it might be the same under the hood, the expression of it is going to be so different in each story. So, and that's where, as a creative person, you get to shine. Because if you want to do a secret door, what's my secret door going to look like? Well, let's see. I'm in a Byzantine palace.
Ooh.
Maybe my secret door is behind a mosaic of Michael the Archangel. It's going to be, it's you have to push it. Whatever. Be creative about it. It's something that's going to manifest itself uniquely and express itself differently in your story because your story is different than any other story. So you can use the same archetypal designs, but it's going to be expressed in a wildly different way based on the storyteller. And guess what? Your audiences are going to appreciate it. They're going to love it.
Mm. Yeah.
And that's
I'm
just the labyrinth.
Yeah,
you know?
that's the cool part, because that is your society, and there's still motivations for characters then, for your protagonist, or if it's not the lead protagonist, one of your protagonists in your story, and it's just so marvelous that you can just that seems to be a nice little roadmap, if you will, um, to kind of help you build that out.
Right.
So
Right.
cool.
So, and while we were going, I made a little list here of
Ooh.
different, and I have this list elsewhere. There might even be more on it, but ways to express labyrinths in terms of setting.
Mm.
Prisons are great ones. Hotels, like in The Shining or in what's the one, Grand
The
Budapest
grand
Hotel,
yeah.
because there's so many doors, right, and
Mhm,
hallways. So
mhm.
these are great ways to settings for labyrinths. Caves, like in The Descent. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
Spider webs, which
Yeah.
you mentioned in Coraline. You've seen the movie Krull, right?
Yes,
They
yes,
have a
yes.
huge spider web in that he's literally crawling on. Fortresses, because of the defensive measures, there is automatically a sense of captivity there.
Mhm.
Racetracks and obstacle courses are also excellent motifs for mazes. I think of like Jodie Foster, Clarice Starling at the beginning um, of Silence of the Lambs. I think of Princess Peach in Super Mario
Yes,
Brothers. She's
yes,
done an
yes.
obstacle course. And also for racetracks, Vanellope in Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because she's in a heroine's labyrinth. so, so anyway, just from a storytelling standpoint, thinking of structuring your story as a labyrinth should give you all sorts of new ideas. And these are not ideas that are readily discussed for hero's journey type stories. Hero's
Mhm.
journey type stories tend to focus on an outward journey. And again, I'm not knocking the hero's journey. I'm a big proponent of it. However, it doesn't always apply. And if your story, if you're listening to this and you have a story in your head and you're thinking of it, you can just think about it right now and you can start to see if it'll apply. And if there's no departure in return as a primary motif, if your character is basically staying in the native culture, well, you're probably in a labyrinth. And if so, then you can use all these archetypal designs that are inherent in the labyrinth.
Yeah, I'm loving it. I'm writing down notes. I wrote a couple of notes for myself.
I love it. That's great.
And as we were talking, I was like, wait a minute, there's like 50 movies I could have added to the list.
There is. There's so many. It's actually
Yeah.
astounding. And TV shows. I didn't even get really into TV shows, but like there's an episode of Xena Warrior Princess. She gets caught in the
Mm.
labyrinth.
Oh, yes, yes.
Um,
I remember that one. It was so good.
yeah, and there's one in Foundation where she's aboard a ships are good spots for labyrinths too because you're captive, but you have freedom of movement. So a spaceship is actually a great motif.
Hmm.
And in Foundation, it's on Apple Plus. There's a couple of heroines in these empty ships that are like labyrinths. And there's even this one where there's this planet where there's this triple goddess, and you have to go on a journey on what's called the spiral. And so you have to go on this spiral journey, and it's like this pilgrimage, and it's just awesome. So anyway, you'll see it everywhere. It's really everywhere.
Cool. Yeah, it's so cool that it's subconscious and it's just like subconscious telling storytelling. Like, and it's just built in. So
It
cool.
is. Well, and
Yeah.
I do think this is how our minds think. You know, when we think about an idea, we think about it, we explore it. And when you watch characters do this physically
Yeah.
in the real world, when you find a locked, if a character grabs a doorknob and shakes it, I want to know what's behind that door now. It doesn't take
Yeah.
much to get me involved. They're just rattling the door and they're like, it's locked. It's like, why? Why is it locked?
Why?
What's behind there? So it immediately provokes your psyche as a human being. So
Yeah.
these will help your storytelling. And like I said, it's not just a setting. This is a whole model, and it lends itself to very profound psychological forces in storytelling.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was it for me. I have some other stuff, but we can go over some of it at another time. There are, I mentioned it last time, the sociocultural labyrinth, but I think we should save that for a separate discussion because it's where culture mirrors labyrinths, and all the things that we just talked about in the physical labyrinths are mirrored through invisible means culturally. And there's a lot to unpack there
Yes.
as well.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But in essence, it's there to provide freedom of movement while also restricting your lead character culturally. And it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Well, and I think, not to get too deep into it, we can talk about it when the time's right. But that is something anyone can understand because maybe sometimes people just feel limited by what they can do.
That's
Just
right.
in general. So like, maybe you feel like the society has put rules on you, or maybe you've put those rules on yourself based on family or socioeconomic reasons or physical disabilities. Like maybe, those are the things that we deal with. And it's so cool to have a story construct that actually is sort of feeding into that or allowing you to make stories around that.
Well, you want to know a big secret? It's behind a locked door. The labyrinth we've been discussing, the overt, the metaphoric, physical labyrinth,
Yeah.
is 2.0. 1.0 is the invisible labyrinth. I think the
Visible
actual original labyrinth internally, the way we feel and experience things, is the socio-cultural labyrinth. And I think what has happened is that in film specifically, the best way to depict the internal psychological stresses of sociocultural experiences is through physical imagery that is best symbolized by an overt physical labyrinth. And that's why we react so strongly to it. That's why I think this is so powerful for storytelling, because it's not a hero's journey. It is different, and it has different meanings behind the symbols and the archetypes. But the physical labyrinth is the easy to see 2.0 version for the original labyrinth, which is cultural and individualistically experienced.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely. I definitely feel that. I feel like that's true. So
Yeah,
I
it is.
can't wait to get deeper into that
Yeah,
convo.
Yeah. What does Sarah Connor have in common with, you know, Elizabeth Bennet? A lot. Even though her labyrinth is physical and, you know, Elizabeth Bennet is sociocultural, they're you'll see the same trademarks between them. But we will save that for another
Yes.
discussion later because it's fascinating. A lot of literature falls into this. Well, that's it, everybody. I just wanted to go over the labyrinth for everybody and really try to introduce this as a serious storytelling model for all types of genres, all types of stories, and especially memoirs. I've heard a lot of memoirists say that they're really upset that the hero's journey doesn't adapt well to their memoir. But the labyrinth will be a beautiful fit because it's sociocultural. So if you want to tell us the story of your family life or how it was to grow up in this one place, well, the labyrinth is what you're going to be building out, and you'll have a lot to draw from because you're drawing from real life. So anyway, that's all I got for today.
It was fantastic. Thanks for having me on your show today. I really love these conversations.
Well, thanks for being here, Retro. You're awesome, and I'm looking forward to many more of these. So, all right. Well, good night, everybody. We'll see you later.